Very welcome, everybody. My name is Phil Kearney. This is my colleague and office mate, Ian Sherwin. And we're going to run this bit of a workshop over the course of the next 90 minutes or so.
I've got my back to you, so I was thinking I might do that.
You're probably okay there? No, you're fine.
You're going to be okay. We're going to talk for about, I hope, 15 minutes, and then it's a workshop where we're actually going to take off from there. So you should be okay. So very, very welcome to the session. Yesterday, we had some really nice speakers for those of you who were here. We had Monica, we had Darren, we had Steve, we had Bobby, all talking about decisions that they make as coaches. And there were some really lovely examples there of, in some cases, tricky decisions, in some cases, uncertain decisions. And those are the kinds of decisions that we're really interested in focusing on within this workshop. Our background is that we are primarily coach developers, and we work on a master's program at the University of Limerick. And on that program, we have coaches who think a lot about their coaching. They come into us with 10, 15 years experience. These are good coaches. These are coaches who have thought long and hard, who have faced many different problems, lots of different experiences in their coaching. They're really good at what they do. Sometimes they dwell on their experiences. They don't always take the lessons from those experiences. One of the things that has struck us from working with these coaches is that they don't always have the structures in place to help them take the lessons they should take out of their experiences. So what we're going to present today, what you're going to work through today, is one of the ways that we try to build coaches' awareness of slightly deeper levels of reflective practice. Encourage them to explore what they can do to enhance their interrogation of their experiences and see what they can get out. Just to give us a flavour, can you give me a wave if you are primarily a coach? Okay, and within that, if you're primarily, or to a certain extent, you're working in high-performance coaching. Lovely. Hands up if you're a primarily coach developer. Okay, and again, a bit of a wave if it's high performance is a part of your remit there. Lovely. Support staff, so not quite coaching, coach developer, but broader support staff. Anybody else? Okay. So just good to get a flavour in terms of who's in the room. Okay, so as I said, coaches, we meet, very, very good at thinking, but this is a way that we engage with them to try and add a little bit of structure to their thinking. What is it that we want coaches to get out of this exercise? Again, I'm going to link back to one of Bobby's slides yesterday. He talked about there is no silver bullet. Rule number one. We are not presenting the way to engage in reflection. That's not the point of what we're doing. We are presenting one of the many different ways we get coaches to experiment with reflective practice in order to build their awareness of what this process is. And we've had some really nice feedback from coaches in terms of their experience engaging with this, as you can see on the screen. Some coaches walk out of the session, and a series of sessions that are linked to this, and they adopt this process. They bring it into the assistant coaches they're working with. Some coaches take little bits that they like, and they bring that into their reflective practice. Others had a good conversation with somebody, and they take that contact and have another conversation with that person down the line. There are lots of different things that somebody can take out of the method that we're going to work through today. All of that is success. This isn't the way to do things because there are many, many different ways, and the important aspect of what we do with the coaches we're working on when they encounter this is to encourage them to explore the different ways that they're engaging in reflective practice. This is our way of encouraging them to explore.
So what we're going to try and get you to think about today and introduce you to is the critical decision making model. And it's based around this work by Crandall, Klein and Hoffman. This book, it gives you a really, really good overview. Great chapter in it, chapter 5, which goes through the cognitive task analysis, which the CDM is based on. And the beautiful thing about decision making is, as Phil has pointed out, there's no right way and wrong way. What we're looking at are tough decisions. And tough decisions mean that you don't really know the outcome. There's uncertainty at the end of each one. And you as a decision maker can influence it positively or negatively in that situation. So for example, today when we look at this model and we go through the process, I want you to kind of think about, okay, I had a positive outcome or a positive influence on this decision, this tough task that we made. And we need to explore that and look at what we did right so that we can get it right again. The flip side of all of that, as you all know, there are tough decisions that have a negative outcome. So what did we do in that process that influenced the negative outcome, and what can we change potentially the next time we face that situation to try and get better at it and do it better the next time? So when we think about what tough decisions are, we'll give you some examples. So we could have one where we may have to remove a player from a session or an athlete from a session. How do we go about doing that? We may have one where you're co-coaching and the assistant coach decides to go a little bit off script. And I see smiling faces here, so I know that's happened to somebody before. And it influences the plan and the rest of the session. Or we could have a point where the coach is approached by a parent and an athlete who decides that I actually want to move to rugby. And you have that discussion on what happens and how do you deal with that. So there are a couple of ones that may arise today. If they do, great, but there are other ones. And again, how you treat them, even if you have the same one, is uncertain and may be different. There is no right way or wrong way.
So, just planting a seed, in a little bit, we're going to ask you to volunteer a tough decision, something you're going to talk about. Again, we've had loads of examples yesterday. I think Monica's example of deselecting an athlete and this idea of, are we going to rip the bandage off, or are we going to try and ease the bandage off? There's a decision to be made, a decision which is going to have consequences. And how do you decide how you're going to act in that situation? What was your thought process? What were you aware of? What were your expectations? All the factors that go into that decision, that's what we're going to explore. There are 3 things that you need within that decision that you're going to explore. Number 1, you need to have actively made the decision. So you need to be somebody in the situation who's an active decision maker. That might be a decision not to act or a decision to act, but you have to be a person who is an active decision maker. Number 2, you have to be willing to share. So again, something that you're comfortable talking about with the other individuals who are here and you're going to be in your group. And number 3, it's got to be a tough case. Something that doesn't have an easy answer. Because the real valuable learning comes from interrogating tough cases. So in a little bit, we're going to ask you to come up with those. And that's sweep 1 of this 4-step method. Okay? Most of the session is not going to be us, it's going to be you working through this particular 4-step method. Sweep 1, you have a chat about the incidents that you come up with, and you pick one that you're going to focus on for today. Okay? Second step
is about the timeline. So this is identifying critical points along the whole process about what happened. Okay, so we're trying to find a start point, we're trying to find an end point, or if that's an end point at all. Okay, so once you get that, try and make a timeline of how this happened and how it occurred.
Give you an example. This timeline needs to be short and sharp. We're not getting into detail yet, we're just mapping out a rough timeline. you're a coach who's been working with an athlete, the parents of this athlete come to you and they say, we don't think your coaching in your club is the best fit for this athlete, for my son going forward, so we're going to move somewhere else. Okay, there's an incident. How do you respond? You have a decision to make in terms of how you respond to that scenario. That, pop it there in the center of the timeline. Because there are things that have likely happened prior to that incident that have a bearing on it and that you need to discuss. Maybe it was to do with performance at the championships a week or 2 weeks before. Maybe it stretches right back to how this child was, how they were performing 2-3 years ago when they first entered the club. But you'll also identify things going forwards. So, coach, parent, athlete sat down in a coffee shop and had a chat about the decision, what they were thinking and why they were thinking that. So that happened after the decision, that fits in. And maybe you project forward 2-3 years later, what was the outcome of that decision? Maybe that comes in there in your timeline. No more detail than that. I know, in this room, there are people who will be mapping out their timeline and they will hear something and they'll want to jump in and ask details about that straight away. Squash that instinct, please. This week is minimum details. What are the key points? That's all we want. What are the key points in your timeline?
The next point is where you can really start digging into it. So it's called the deepening sweep, and it's where you pinpoint each of those incidents along the way to this decision, and you start digging into that. Think about how you felt. Think about the situation. Think about what you thought, what your feelings were. Think about the relationship that you had. Try and get as much detail as you can about this incident that can form the decision and give you a background. When you reflect on something and you reflect on it deep enough, you can get really, really clear ideas about what you want to try and do and what informed that decision. And then that leads us to sweep 4.
Okay. So, you will be working groups of 3. One person will be the coach who is telling their story. That's the easy job. The second person will be mapping the timeline, asking the questions and taking notes about this progressive deepening. The third person is going to be listening very, very carefully, because their job is to come up with what-if questions. You describe the situation and the athlete responded like this. What if the athlete had responded like this instead? This was the outcome. What if this had been the outcome? Your job as you're listening through the first 2, or the stage, sweep 2 and 3, is to come up with what would be good what-if questions. To really start testing assumptions, knowledge, ideas in relation to this decision. And to really start to get at a deeper level of what this coach understands about this decision. Yes.
So, can you share your reasoning around why you have one individual asking those questions and not more?
So, as with everything, this is a little bit fuzzy. I'm encouraging one because I want one person really stepping back and taking an outside view, not listening to the details of the story, but trying to work up and generate these what-if questions in the purpose of today's timeline. Of course, the other person can also ask the what-if questions. That can be done. The other person who's listening to the what-if questions can dip in and can add some progressive deepening questions as well. I'm trying to separate the roles a little bit because the primary focus seems to work better when we separate those roles, okay? Especially in a time-constrained situation like that. I say time-constrained because normally we take 2 hours to work through this. It doesn't always take the full 2 hours, but we want to give this enough time. This is something that can be done over several sittings as opposed to just one. We might not get through all of this today, and that's okay. But what we will get through today, you will get enough of a feel for the process to see if this is something that you want to experiment with as you go forward. So we've got 4 sweeps. I say be disciplined, Once we've got our incident, just do the timeline. Once you've got your timeline, just do the progressive deepening. Hold off on those hypotheticals, those why questions. Leave them for the fourth scoop. Again, as Ian said, this isn't our method. Okay, this comes from a body of literature outside of sport, which is used quite extensively, and we're just bringing it across into sports coaching. Like any good coach or magpie does, we saw something shiny and thought, I can experiment with that. But experiment is the right word. Okay, so next steps. First off, I'm going to give you that narrows down what sport I coach a little bit. I'm going to give you 1 minute of individual time. Okay? No talking to anybody else. On the front of your worksheet, there's a post-it. On that post-it, I would like you to write down 1 incident that you think you could discuss, you'd be willing to discuss with the group. Remember, you were an active decision maker. You're willing to share, and it's a tough case. There's no easy answers. Your minute starts now. Okay, very nice. Next step. We designed this around working in groups of 3. We have slightly bigger tables. If you'd like to work in a group of 4, that's absolutely fine. We can work that in. Groups of 3, if you're in a big table, you think, okay, we've got a couple of people from that table. We've got a free table up here. We've got a free table up here. I get you to get into groups, please. Groups of 3, or if you're happy to stick with it as you are, that's fine. And you then need to swap, and you've only got 2.5 minutes to do this. You then swap incidents. Explain what the incident is, and pick one, just one, that your group is going to explore. Yeah? Sorry, you say it?
There are 4 as well.
There are 4, and you're happy as a 4 that decides to. We had this conversation earlier about when you push, when you string.
Sorry, my baby was on the shed.
That's fine, you have no insight. Of course you have an insight.
So, you want to go first? No, I'm still thinking about which one I'm going to share. Present it to you. I haven't coached
Oh wow.
So my top swimmer time
Honest, I think yours is what I want to know more about. So you're wrong. So I'm happy to ask for more questions. I could ask a question.